42 games over the last 3 seasons, which is the most of any FBS program. However, the team's only 2 losses over that span come against Alabama, including a loss in the SEC title game, which ultimately kept them out of the playoff. Now, the man responsible for those losses joins us now. Coach Saban, welcome to College Football Live. And as we mentioned, your Bama team last year defeated Georgia in the SEC championship game. What is the key to Georgia's success to getting back to the playoff?
Well, I think Georgia knows how to win. They have a good bunch of players that have talent. They have a returning quarterback. They have a really good offensive line. So I don't think they have a lot of weaknesses. But I do think that the number one thing when it comes to really getting to the top, because success is not a continuum, it's momentary. So your players have to be very mature in terms of their competitive spirit to stay focused on being the best that they can be, and win, lose, or draw, they have to continue to improve so that they're playing their best football at the end of the season. And I think Georgia's very capable of doing that.
Another team capable of doing that is Oklahoma, who is set for their first season in the SEC. What kind of challenge, Coach, do you see them facing this year?
I think one thing that hasn't been mentioned about the new teams coming into the league is the teams that have been in the league have played each other as common opponents. And I think it's a huge advantage as a coach if you play teams year in and year out, because you sort of got a better feel for them. You have a better idea of what their tendencies are. You have a better idea of their players, their strengths and weaknesses. So Oklahoma and Texas are not going to enjoy that. But I think the biggest thing for Oklahoma is the physicality of the SEC week in and week out, and how they're going to be able to sustain that through the course of the season.
Now, one of the best players in college football, Missouri wide receiver Luther Burden III, returns this year. What makes him such a special player, Coach?
Well, he's a complete player at the wide receiver position. The guy's got great hands. He's a good route runner. He's got explosive speed to get on top of the defense, but yet he can run good routes and make possession plays on third down when you need it. I think they have a good quarterback, which obviously is going to complement his abilities to play. And I just think he's a team player and a complete player at that position.
They also have a very nice schedule as well. Now, following his impressive performance in the Citrus Bowl, everyone was talking about Tennessee quarterback Nico Iamaleava. Are you buying into the hype on Nico?
Well, if you look at the history of our programs, we've had some great quarterbacks, and all those great quarterbacks had to have an entry-level year. In other words, they started from someplace. And I think Nico is a very talented guy. He obviously showed what he could do in the bowl game last year. They have a system that I think is very quarterback dependent, but it's also quarterback friendly. And I think Josh Heupel does a really good job of developing his quarterback. So if this guy can maintain his poise, take care of the football, not get affected by all the external hype and expectation that people will sort of put on him as a new player, and be able to stay focused on what it takes to be successful, play in and play out, I think he'll do a really good job for him.
And you mentioned the hype. From a coach's side, how do you help a quarterback manage that hype?
Well, I think, you really want people on your team that are motivated internally. In other words, they're driven to be the best player that they can be. Some people are sort of motivated externally by what other people think, what other people say. And I think in this day and age, with all the hype around athletes at any level in any game, that you have to be one of those people that are really internally motivated. So you're going out every day to try to be the best player you can be. You don't care what other people say. You don't care what other people think. You're not affected by that. You don't let that create anxiety, whether the expectations are high or low. You're just going to go out there and do the best you can to be the best you can be. And that's the best way to compete. That's the best way to be the best player you can be.
And honestly, Coach, that's the best way to go about life, is continuing that internal motivation, but not letting the outside noise deter you from that. So I think we can all take those words and implement them everywhere. Now, continuing on in the SEC, you called LSU a sleeper team yesterday. Why?
Well, I think that people sort of look at LSU having first-round draft pick, quarterback, 2 first-round wide receivers. They see these significant impact players leave the program. But what I see at LSU is still a very good, talented receiver core. I see a young quarterback who has tremendous potential, and I see the defense getting better. So I think the squad overall is probably more balanced and a better squad than they had a year ago, even though they don't have those 3 significant players. So I think they're still going to have a much better team than people may give them credit for.
And Coach talked about how he has the deepest and most accountable team he's ever had before. Do you agree with him?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's really, really important that, you know, you have a group of guys that want to be responsible for their own self-determination. In other words, coach defines what it takes to be successful, but they have to be accountable to that day in and day out. And I think the maturity of your team and a team that's committed to that is very, very important. You know, I heard, you know, Brent Venables told me that we have more guys that are self-motivated that can lead themselves. I think that's really, really important, that you're not depending on somebody else to get you to do the things you need to do to be successful.
100%. It goes back to that internal motivation, and I think that accountability and that motivation has been a theme throughout each day at Media Day. Now, a man you know well, Lane Kiffin, had this to say when it comes to expectations on this year's squad.
There's plenty of, you know, noise out there that means nothing, and plenty of teams over years in all sports have been ranked high and haven't played well, and been ranked low and played really well. So none of that means anything in respects to Coach Saban's terms. You know, this is really, as he said, this is a rat poison situation here, to have all this attention on our players, and it means nothing.
Rat poison aside, Coach, what does Ole Miss need to do to meet those lofty expectations this year?
Well, I think the key word there is you keep saying expectations. I think, you know, you want high achievement motivation and low anxiety if you're going to perform well. And if you allow expectations to create anxiety and think you have something to go out and prove rather than just going out and doing your job and playing within yourself, you're going to create some negative situations for yourself, and you're not going to perform like you're capable of performing. And I think our team year before last had a lot of anxiety. They were in a very similar situation. They were #1 out of the box. A lot of people, with Bryce Young coming back after winning a Heisman Trophy, put this really high standard and expectation on the team, and it created internal anxiety that really affected our performance, especially in close games, especially at the end of close games. And we didn't perform very well, and we didn't finish like we needed to. So consequently, that team didn't sort of live up to those standards and expectations that people created for them, but they also didn't live up to the standards of what they were capable of doing.
Give me something. Light a cigarette just so I can breathe.